Welcome to Podkey Daily News, your fast brief on the forces reshaping technology, health, and security. Meta is facing a settlement measured in the tens of billions. Nvidia is still posting numbers that keep the AI spending boom alive. And in the Himalayas, a disaster zone has left hundreds unaccounted for. Meta has agreed to pay up to $17.1 billion over 10 years, widely reported as an $18 billion settlement in a case brought by nearly every U.S. state over alleged harms to young users of Facebook and Instagram. The company admits no wrongdoing, and the deal avoids a California trial that could have exposed Meta to liabilities reported above $200 billion. Proposed safeguards include a 2-hour daily limit for under 18s. Disabled push notifications, hidden like counts, usage alerts, school mode limits, and nighttime shutdowns. The biggest caveat is scale. The full payment and wider effect depend on TikTok and YouTube accepting comparable restrictions and contributions. Critics say enforcement is the central test. Parent advocate Amy Neville and former Meta whistleblower Arturo Bejar argue the package needs independently verified evidence that harm is falling, including risks from predators and youth mental health crises. Investors treated the settlement as manageable. The next pressure point comes from lawsuits by school districts and individuals, especially after Meta and YouTube were found liable in an individual harm case in March. Nvidia reported more than $96 billion in quarterly revenue for the 3 months through July, about double the year-earlier figure, and forecast roughly $108 billion for the current quarter. Those results matter far beyond one chipmaker. Nvidia supplies the data centers being built by Amazon, Microsoft, Google, Meta, and other major cloud companies, so its revenue is a live measure of AI infrastructure demand. For now, demand remains exceptionally strong despite persistent fears that AI spending has become a bubble. Jensen Huang has also raised the prospect of 70% revenue growth by 2028. The risk is increasingly financial as well as technological. Nvidia's investments, loans, and reported financing arrangements involving customers have fueled concern that the company may be helping finance demand for its own chips. Markets will watch whether customers can turn enormous data center spending into durable revenue, and whether Nvidia carries meaningful exposure if those financing structures weaken. Rescuers are facing extreme conditions after flash floods and mudslides near the Nepal-Tibet border swept away villages, roads, bridges, hydropower sites, buildings, and trucks. Death estimates rose from at least 31 to nearly 200, while hundreds remain missing. The missing include foreign tourists, Indian travelers, Americans, police officers, and hundreds reported missing on the Tibetan side. Experts increasingly point to a rock and ice avalanche, glacier collapse, or glacial lake outburst. The landslide may itself have produced tremors that resembled an earthquake. Climate-driven glacier melt raises the regional threat, while weak hazard monitoring, damaged communications, blocked roads, and limited cross-border information are making this emergency harder to manage. The Langtang region draws trekkers and religious pilgrims. Reliable casualty figures and access for rescue teams are the immediate things to watch. The FDA has approved Revolution Medicines' Razon-Q, the first therapy aimed at a mutation that drives roughly 1/3 of human cancers and resisted researchers for 4 decades. In a late-stage study, patients on the drug lived more than 13 months, nearly twice as long as patients receiving chemotherapy alone. That is especially consequential in pancreatic cancer, where many patients are told they have a year or less. The treatment will cost close to $40,000 a month. Its approval also marks a broader move toward precision cancer medicine, where treatments target specific biological drivers of disease. In northwest Nigeria, recorded bandit attacks rose 78% in the first half of the year. Around 800,000 people have fled their homes amid kidnappings, killings, arson, and growing school absences. Nigeria plans to recruit 28,000 soldiers and has set aside a record $4 billion for defense and security. The military remains overstretched, and arming local groups could deepen retaliatory violence. In Mexico, Reporters Without Borders says at least 17 journalists have been killed since Claudia Sheinbaum became president. 7 of the 22 journalists killed worldwide so far this year were from Mexico. The murder of columnist Francisco Alejandro Leiva Aguilar, a day after he received threats tied to his reporting on local officials, has intensified demands for credible protection and investigations. Sheinbaum has promised stronger safeguards, while journalist groups warn that impunity is creating an atmosphere of silence around local power. The State Department has paused immigrant visa processing while officers receive new instructions for evaluating applicants' finances. The administration is seeking bank records, health records, and added fees as part of a broader effort to deter immigration by people with limited means. Separately, officials are preparing a campaign that could revoke as many as 200,000 visitor and business visas for people who later applied for asylum. The administration calls undisclosed future asylum plans fraud. Immigration lawyers say visa revocation may have limited effect on people already inside the country with pending asylum claims or other applications. Legal challenges are likely, especially because circumstances can change after someone enters the United States. France is becoming the larger concern in European bond markets, overtaking Italy in investors' risk calculations. France has a high debt burden and a large budget deficit, with difficult budget talks and a presidential election ahead. Italy still carries more debt relative to the size of its economy, yet it is running a budget surplus and improving its debt path. Italian government bonds now yield less than French bonds, a reversal of a decades-old market hierarchy. That shift matters for borrowing costs across Europe. Investors are finding Southern European debt relatively more attractive, while France and Germany issue substantially more debt. That's the brief from Podkey Daily News. Watch the details behind the biggest numbers, from Meta's enforcement plan to the financing underneath the AI build-out. This episode was generated by Podkey. Create your own at podkey.fm.
Podkey.